Tatiana, hated America for the very same reasons that the Ryhoffs want to stay here.
Senator Chuck Schumer is putting pressure on the INS to exhaust all possibilities for keeping this man in the States and keeping this family together.
There's a provision in the Patriot Act, which was just passed 6 months ago, which says that the INS, for those who were lost, has to go through every loophole to help the families obtain citizenship. The unfairness for the Ryhoffs was a simple one, that had their mother lived, they'd be on the path to citizenship.
For now, the Ryhoff family waits in limbo, placing all their faith in the U.S. system and sense of justice. According to their lawyer, there's no backing down.
We won't. If we have to get an act of Congress passed, we will.
You know, Rich, it's going to be interesting to watch this case now and see how it moves forward with the senator's weight behind it. Back to you.
And we have some new developments on this case tonight, and it's news that Mr. Ryhoff will definitely be pleased to hear. Immigration and Naturalization Service has agreed to let him and his 2 children remain in the United States. Still some questions pending, and we're going to get an explanation on that further. And for more on that, I'm now joined by Mr. Ryhoff's attorney. Michael Wiles joins us. He's also a member of the City Council in Englewood, New Jersey, and he joins us out of our Manhattan studio tonight. Michael, it's good news, but it's hardly a why.
Sort of like pregnancy, yes or it's no, and a yes is no. Our client is very concerned still, as his children are, for whether or not their future will be facilitated on your soil. After all, their mother and wife is buried here, and the government would contemplate the way the case has been crafted so far, that they would be separated. And the fact is that the senator, the good senator from New York, that is Senator Schumer, not that Hillary Clinton wasn't good, but she didn't rise to the occasion on this opportunity, did call the Immigration Service up and looked with an eye towards getting this case favorably approved. And
you know, Rich, it's going to be interesting to watch this case now and see how it moves forward with the senator's weight behind it. Back to you.
And we have some new developments on this case tonight, and it's news that Mr. Ryhoff will definitely be pleased to hear. Immigration and Naturalization Service has agreed to let him and his 2 children remain in the United States. Still some questions pending, and we're going to get an explanation on that further. And for more on that, I'm now joined by Mr. Ryhoff's attorney. Michael Wiles joins us. He's also a member of the City Council in Englewood, New Jersey, and he joins us out of our Manhattan studio tonight. Michael, it's good news, but it's hardly a finished product. Explain what happened today, but nonetheless, why it's good news for your client.
I explained to my client that it's sort of like pregnancy. It's either yes or it's no, and anything short of a yes is, in fact, still a no. Our client is very concerned still, as his children are, for whether or not their future will be facilitated on your soil. After all, their mother and wife is buried here, and the government would contemplate the way the case has been crafted so far, that they would be separated. And the fact is that the senator, the good senator from New York, that is Senator Schumer, not that Hillary Clinton wasn't good, but she didn't rise to the occasion on this opportunity, did call the Immigration Service up and looked with an eye towards getting this case favorably approved. And the word that we have of late from the Immigration Service is that they are, in fact, looking to do that. We filed a host of different applications, from political asylum to a labor certification based on regular old-fashioned job sponsorship, and the visa lottery. Imagine this, that she won the lottery, but a few months before she perished. To be so lucky to win but one of 55,000 visas that are given out to people all over the world, and yet to be so unlucky to lose your life. But what's really unfortunate about this case is that the family is still fighting for their rights, that they have to contend with lawyers and bureaucrats. It's just unconscionable, given the injury that they've suffered.
But what is the still pending question? And as you indicated, it's not on paper yet. The senator indicated that he has good news from the INS. But what is the still extenuating circumstances and questions? Is it to do with the fraud charge, at least, that was levied in '94? Is that the major holdup at the moment?
If I can, just to describe the fraud issue, our client filed a series of cases over the years and indicated to us at one point that he had filed for political asylum. Little did he know, or did we learn until after his wife died, when we saw the file under the Freedom of Information Act, that one of the people he went to actually filed a phony marriage case. Instead of applying for asylum, which our client had indicated he wanted to apply as a Georgian coming from a region where he felt persecuted from the former USSR, this unscrupulous person who held himself out as an attorney filed a fictitious marriage case, got his hand on some marriage certificates, found somebody that he had no connection to whatsoever, filed these papers. In one of the final hearings with our client, the Immigration Service then denied the case and approved his son's, indicating that he didn't come forward on this marriage. Well, we made it very clear to the government and proved thereafter that he had no idea who this person was that he allegedly married, nor did he know anything of the final disposition of this case. And we proved that this was a known charlatan, if you would, that the government had on file who filed these kind of fictitious cases. The case ultimately depends on this. Are we going to use the resources or the bureaucracy and treat this as a normal case? Or are we going to look at this with compassion and remind ourselves that we're sending a very strong message, a very negative message, when we would treat those that come our way with Lady Liberty but a few blocks from the studio? We have to make sure that we send that a very strong message that if you come to our shores and you are a victim of terrorism, you are one of us and we will protect you. Let's marshal our resources and get those people that would want us harm or would use insidious methods of operations, as in the 9/11 attacks, and make sure the Immigration Service gets them.
If his wife had never perished on 9/11, what would be his residency status at the moment?
Well, it's because his wife died on 9/11 that his residency status would be treated differently. The answer to your question is he would be here without a status because his status was totally dependent on his wife. But the U.S. Patriot Act was promulgated by Congress in the waking days and weeks after the World Trade Center attack to do exactly what Congress intended to do, which was to put people like my client in a position as if their spouses had lived. One of the strongest things the government was going to do, besides marshaling resources to combat terrorism and create a stronger, more controlled border, a webless seam, if you would, was to make sure that people like Vasily and other clients that I've represented since then, unfortunately, put them in a position that their spouse had lived. Mm-hmm. And the simple fact is that had Vasily's wife lived, he would have been able to file for waivers of this fraud that was created by another attorney. And he would have been protected ultimately to remain here. And in fact, in this instance, is being punished because his wife was killed.
We've spoken to a few similar circumstances, not identical, they all vary, but widows who lost loved ones that had the citizenship, many with still unanswered questions about their future. Granted, each one is a separate case unto itself, but by and large, has the INS done right by them, or are these people still either in limbo or they're facing certain deportation?
I've had a score of clients since September 11th. Forget the detainees that called in the days after they were picked up. These were spouses, many of whom were so scared to come into our office in Manhattan to see us because they feared coming to Manhattan that I had to see in my home in Englewood, New Jersey. Ultimately, a lot of the cases where there were less issues were adjudicated. Not one of them received special attention. They were put into the hopper. We noted on their applications that they were surviving spouses of World Trade Center victims, and the government adjudicated them and took their sweet time, I might add. I also represented Dina Gilby, a noted British national whose husband spent the better part of the day trying to help people and then perished himself. She also faced untoward conduct and was under the threat, or she perceived the threat, of removal. And the fact is, this could, at the very least, or hopefully at the very most, just be an agency that is just treating its constituents, if you would, with the same bureaucratic business as usual. Well, that's not acceptable post 9/11. We hold our government to a higher standard, not only as a beacon of freedom, but to make sure that people who are on our soil will be treated appropriately.
And finally, Michael, I know there's no such thing, as you said, as being half pregnant, but when it's all said and done, do you think Vasily will be able to stay in the States with his kids?
Yeah, without a doubt. If it takes Congress making a special act in order to keep him here, or marching again to Washington, or doing whatever it is that we need to do, we will do this. We've given Vasily our word. We've stood by him and a lot of other people, and we expect that the government will rise to the occasion. We're very appreciative that the government of Russia has looked into this and is putting pressure on the State Department, and Senator Schumer is also. His intentions were really, really appreciated.
Well, Michael, I think that's a good note to end on. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, we'll continue to follow the case, but it looks good, at least for the family at the moment. Now, when we come back on RNN Live, Columbus Day Parade went on as planned today. A little brisk the weather here, but everything went off without a hitch, except the Mayor Bloomberg wasn't there. Why, you ask? He was in the Bronx having lunch with the Sopranos cast members who are not allowed to march. Now, we're going to have the latest on the scandal, and we're going to have your reaction. Now,